What's this? Tabletop Island, huh? Let's see what this is all about.
You will bid gold on slaves, weapons, gladiators. You will deceive each other. Blood will be shed, and you will bring influence to your house, or you will lose. This is Spartacus.
Welcome to Tabletop Island. I'm Bernardo, your host, and today we're going to be taking a look at the board game Spartacus, the Game of Blood and Treachery by Gale Force 9. Holy crap, I enjoy this game. Now, one thing you're going to notice too, Gale Force 9 recently dropped some news that they're reprinting this game. Now, the thing about the reprint is it will not have the IP. It does look a bit vanilla for me, but we'll talk about my final thoughts on that and this game. But let's first take a look at the components. And first, you're going to take a look at this really nice board. I love how bloody and violent this looks. It has that same kind of intensity I would expect in an arena board game. Now, the main premise of the game is that you are one of the selected houses and you're trying to have the most influence to get to a certain point of influence, which in this game is 12, to win. And you do so by bidding on gladiators, slaves, trying to win over the crowd in the arena. Now, just because you don't win fights in the arena does not mean that you'll lose. In fact, a lot of the individuals that end up winning, or from what I've gotten a chance to play with thus far, ends up being the people who aren't actually winning in the arena. In fact, I was winning more fights in the arena and I still lost because they just had a better strategic plan and they were set up for success. And just because you end up hosting an event, which we'll get there, doesn't mean you have to fight with your own gladiators, which is a key importance here. But let's keep looking at these components. We have these really nice miniatures. Mine actually came painted with these really nice bases with blood stains on them. I love that. I definitely appreciate that they painted them. While I can paint myself, anything that saves me time from having to paint is always a plus. That was definitely a bonus here. You'll see here that there are a few set of cards, which we'll talk a little bit more in a moment. We have intrigue cards, which are kind of like your scheme cards. They can be things that can help you out. They can give you guards to foil other people's plans if they ever try to throw in like schemes against you. It's also just added bonuses for you in the game. You also have the market cards, which show up during the market phase in the game when you end up buying things, whether it's a gladiator, a slave, or some equipment. All of that kind of stuff you can buy in the market phase. And then you have an abundance of dice here. They're really nice. They're different colors. They're the right size, which we'll get into in a moment. There's red, black, and blue. We'll get into that when it comes to the fighting part of this review here. And you also have these nice cardboard tokens for each individual house. You also have like injured tokens, favored tokens, which is when a gladiator wins his first fight in an arena. And also the champion phase when they end up winning 2, which means you get more influence the more with that, and they end up losing influence if they end up killing champions and things in arena fights, but we'll get there. And there's also boast tokens if you end up having the expansion for Shadow of Death. That has the boast token, which can kind of boast up your gladiator, and while that does allow them and force them to have to pick that gladiator, that can also set you back, because if they lose, then you've overhyped your character, and they don't like that. And finally, you have these tokens. Now, you will see here that the game comes with these cardboard tokens. I ended up upgrading them to these nice metal gold coins. My buddy Matt Wilkins is actually the one who showed me this game. He ended up getting plastic tokens, which are fine. You can find those online, some plastic Roman tokens. They work just fine. I just wanted to go all out for this game, so I got these really nice metal coins from eBay. I'll have a link in the description where I got them. I'm not sure how long they'll be there for, but at least you'll get an idea what to look out for if that one specifically is sold out. But the coins are really nice. They're not too big to the size of like a $50, which you wouldn't want, because when you end up bidding in the game, you have to have it in a closed fist, and the element of surprise is important. So if you have actual size coins of like a $50, they're going to be able to tell how many you have because your fist is going to look a lot bigger. So that's something important to know too. Finally, you also have these house kind of really thick cardboard pieces here. They show what house you are. They explain how many gladiators, slaves, and guards you start out with, how much gold you start out with. It's also your influence tracker where you'll put your token on. For a shorter game, you start at 7. For a normal game, you start at 4. And for a long game, you start at 1. And your goal is to get to 12. And honestly, that does take a lot longer than you think. In fact, when I ended up playing a shorter game just to get an idea with it, it ended up taking us 3 hours, which sounds absolutely absurd, but there was so much back and forth, so much fighting. It was a lot of fun, but it dragged on a little bit longer than I'd like it to. And the only reason also being is that I was still quite learning the game and teaching everybody. So there was still a lot to learn, and everybody was new to the game. So there's also that to consider. With my thoughts now, I think a short game I could probably finish maybe an hour and a half. I think a normal game maybe about 2 hours, and maybe a longer game maybe about 3.5 to 4 hours. I know that sounds like a bigger leap, but because there's so many cards that require a certain amount of influence for you to play them, that's where things get important. With the Intrigue card specifically, they tell you in the corner how much influence you need to use them, and there's a lot that are a lot higher. So there can be a point in the game where you're just not rapidly playing your cards like we were when we did a shorter game because we started at 7 influence. So that's something to keep track of also. And finally, the game does not come with it. I showed it in the commercial. It is an awesome 3D arena. I ended up getting it 3D printed. It had a black and orange color to it. I had no reference to go off of. A lot of what I saw on BoardGameGeek.com, they didn't really paint theirs. They kind of added like these stickers or things like that. There weren't too many that I had to reference for painting. So I took an image online of one arena shot that kind of inspired me, the look that I wanted to go for when I paint it, and I just winged it. And I love how it came out. It looks awesome. It's the perfect size, and it really draws you in. One of the things I wanted to avoid when I got this made was I didn't want it to stand too tall. There's too many arenas I saw that people customly made that were a little too tall, and you kind of had to stand up or lean up a little too high in order to see in it. With this one, you can still be sitting down and still look inside of the arena. If you're playing in the arena, obviously you probably want to stand up because it's more of an intense moment for you, but maybe everyone stands up because they have a lot of money on the line, and by them bidding, that's important. I will have a link in the description for the individual who got this made for me if this is interesting to you. Keeping in mind it is a heavy price. He is shipping from the UK, so there is also shipping costs to consider too. But if you're committed to this game like I was, it's an awesome addition. And if you're interested in knowing a little bit on the colors I used to paint it, reach out to me. You can reach out to me on all social media platforms. Email me at tabletopisland@gmail.com if you feel that you want a little bit more on some of the paint choices I use to maybe either amplify one you already have, or if you're thinking about getting one yourself. Now, the game consists of a few phases. There's the Upkeep Phase, where you heal any injuries you may get in the arena fights, which we'll talk about in a moment, where you end up refreshing your cards and kind of rebalancing your ledgers with coins that you get back, depending on the slaves you have and the gladiators that you have also. Because for the gladiators, you need to be able to give 1 gold coin to the bank. And for slaves, you retrieve 1 gold coin from the bank. Some characters break even from the start. Others can actually be losing gold as the game progresses. Now, you start off with enough gold to really get you through a few amount of rounds. So be wary of that before you bid all your money, because this is going to be key importance here. Because if not, you're going to have to start giving up some of your stuff. And you don't want that. Trust me. And then you have the Intrigue Phase. The Intrigue Phase is when you end up redrawing 3 cards to each player. That's where you can play scheme cards, cash in cards, and use like house rules, house abilities, whichever ones that you have. And by house rule, I mean your actual house character that you're playing, not one you create for the game. But if you do that, that's also cool. I haven't done that. I don't see any need to do so either. Then you have my favorite phase, which is the market phase, and it's a lot of people's favorite phase also. It's when you get to buy things. And how buying things works, this is the time where you end up hiding your gold under the table in one hand. Now, you can know how much gold an individual has prior, but once you get to the market phase, you don't show them anything. You don't have to talk about anything. You can lie, you can be treacherous, deceitful, you can do almost anything you want, but again, don't be a jerk. So there's times where I see people playing it online where you can say, Yeah, I will give you 1 gold to not put me in the arena, and then or to not bid on this item, and they'll be like, sure, and they'll take your gold, and then they'll still bid anyway and say, I didn't have to do it. I don't like that rule. I don't think you should implement it that way. I don't think it's fun to the game, and I don't think it adds value. It just makes it so you're not trusted in a game, and it just doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth, and I just would never want to do that to my friends. So if they end up paying me or to try to bribe me for something, if I take the money, I'm gonna go with it. Now, I can lie about what's on a card if I say, look, this is gonna help us both. I do need some of your influence. If so, I'll give you 2 cards and it's gonna do this for us. And yeah, maybe I'll actually give them 2 cards, but it will do something entirely different. That's different. But just straight up lying and not actually following through with what you told them, that's not fun. I don't appreciate that in the game. 1 by 1, you end up revealing kind of market cards depending on the number of players playing. So if you reveal, like, let's say a gladiator, under the table you're going to put X amount of coins or X amount of gold that you want to bid on that gladiator to win it. You put it in a closed fist and you all have it in the center of the table. Once everyone is already put up, and again, you can put 0 if you don't want to bid, but you don't end up actually sitting out. So like, if you're just gonna say, I'm not gonna bid, don't not put your fist up, just act like you're gonna be bidding on something, because that also makes people waste gold, which is a really fun strategic part of the game. And again, you're bidding to get the most. So if you have the most gold, you win. If you tie, then you put that gold on the table and you go back under the table, add more gold. Let's say you don't wanna add gold. Empty fist, nothing. If they add 1, they win it. If you both add nothing, then nobody wins it and it goes to a discard pile. So this is the fun part where you can get gladiators to make your army stronger, slaves to get in more income, and then weapons to make weaker gladiators a lot stronger. And with the gladiators itself, there's a lot of strong ones. I also have the promo cards with the game, which are kind of the legendary fighters. I love them so much. They're great. And they actually balance out Theocles, because Theocles in the game is absolutely insane. He gets to roll 5 dice for quite a bit of things here, and 5 attack, you almost always are going to get a hit. Actually, you're probably always going to get a hit unless you have an item. So it's good to understand that. But with the Primus, which is added in one of the other expansions here, Primus allows you to put in gladiators with kind of a pair. So you can fight with partner gladiators, and Theocles can't do that. So you'll end up always putting it 2 against 1. And I'll be honest with you, while Theocles is fantastic, you still have to roll pretty well. And there's a lot of times where I've rolled like crap with Theocles, or just with gladiators in general. I've had friends roll like crap, and it just completely not matter how strong he is, because you still get destroyed. Then finally, at the end of the market phase, where you kind of bid on the characters from the market, you bid on who's going to be host. Host decides who goes into the arena, and when you do end up getting host, you go up 1 influence. So that's a very common way to go up in influence. Now, you don't have to put yourself in the arena, but you can also put yourself in someone else or 2 other people. So this is also important too. Getting the influence is really good, but strategically planning to kind of weaken someone else's army or set someone else up for failure is super important, whether it's against you or not. And this is where you put your fists out for gold and then you reveal. And this, I enjoy that it's last, because if you spent all your money on gladiators because you outbid everyone, the chances of you getting host 2 pretty slim and none, unless you have an abundance amount of slaves and keep getting income. But yeah, I love that so much, and being host is a lot of fun, because depending on who wins the fight, you can determine the loser ends up living with thumbs up, or you end up beheading him and he dies from the game. And depending on the outcome also depends on who wins with kind of their bids. So looking against that too, to kind of make sure certain people don't get a lot of money, is another piece of the strategy. Whether they get injured means you end up losing all of 2 dice, which I'll talk about fighting in a moment. And then beheaded is if you lose all of them, which you're done. Or if when you lose they point it downwards, then you're also done. And if you only lose 1 dice, then the fight ends. You don't get injured, but they can still determine whether you die or live. So that's another thing to note too. And again, the bidding around the board determines who gets what gold. Oh, they bid on this player getting injured. Oh, they bidded on a kind of decapitation, which is death. or they just completely just bid on a victory, which doesn't get you as much money as it would if you kind of determine the real outcome of the fight. And there's a lot of strategy there too, and a lot of the people that played with bidding, they won because they made really good bids, and they set people up for failure against people they knew would win, which ended up being me. And I'm good. And that again all happens in the arena phase when you fight. Now, when the two individuals are selected, you put them on spot 1 and 2 in the arena, and you fight. You have a certain amount of movement depending on the number of blue dice you have. The black dice are your defense dice, and your red dice are your attack dice. Now, your defense, the number of defense dice you have determines what number that person has to roll to actually get a hit on you. And that is super important because how fighting works, you end up rolling, let's say you move up close to the person, you're adjacent to them. Unless you have an item that can do range, you have to be adjacent to that individual. And it has to be across line of sight since there's honeycombs. So that's important too. Diagonal will not work. And once you set yourself up to fight someone, you roll your attack dice and they roll their defense dice. Now you go in chronological order. So let's say I rolled a 6, a 5, and a 1. I put those in order, and let's say they also had 3 dice. They rolled a 6, a 4, and a 2. Well, the 6 cancels each other out. Their 5 hits their 4, and their 2 defends against their 1. So they did effectively get 1 hit. 1 hit means you lose 1 dice, but you get to choose which color die you lose, whether it's your speed, your defense, or your attack. And it's important to note too that the amount of speed you have determines who goes first. So while you think, yeah, getting rid of your speed is good, that may not work for you because you want to get in the first hits on your opponent, which is going to be super crucial, especially if they are just really just trying to outroll you. If they, even if you have, let's say 3 dice and they only have 2, if they roll 1 higher than yours, and both of yours, then you're still going to get hit. So that's super important to know too. But the game is so much fun. Again, there's a lot of luck with the rolling, but depending on the different armor you have, you can really mitigate how well they do. You can turn a weaker gladiator into a strong gladiator, a stronger gladiator into a freaking almost invincible gladiator, which again still depends on their rolls. And there's just so much deceit, so much excitement in watching people fight, and so much frustration when the dice just don't like you at all. And it's so much fun because, again, even if you don't win in the arena, you're right, you don't always win the game. And I am a living example of that. Man, but I still had a lot of fun winning in the arena. And oh, this game is just awesome. Now, the game I did hear about from my buddy Matt Wilkins, when he showed it to me, it was in his top 100 board games of all time. I believe it was number 3. And I was like, oh, this sounds like the kind of game my friends would love. Then I watched Actual Low recently, his top 50 games of all time, and his number 1 was Spartacus. I was like, okay, I need to get this game. I had heard about the reprint, but it looked a little too vanilla. Doesn't have the intensity I wanted from the game itself. I wanted it to look violent because the arena is supposed to be a violent fight. That one looked a little vanilla and a little more calm. Now, while I did hear it will have the same game mechanism, and it's really going to depend on the experience you have with your friends, depending on how much intensity is actually in the game, I like to have the visual added to it too, especially if they didn't watch the show. I watched the show because I really wanted the game and I wanted to know about the show, and the show was awesome. Season 1's the best, but we won't talk about that here. But that's honestly it for you guys. Now, the price point. The price point is very high. I did pay a heavy price. I believe I paid about $200. Bernardo, I know you're crazy, but mine came painted. I got every expansion, including the 5 promo cards, which are extremely rare. And I wanted everything for the game. And then I went out and got the gold coins and then got the arena. But yeah, I'll have again the link in the description where you can get your arena. He'll be able to quote you a price. I honestly don't remember. It was a while ago, and I ended up painting it a while ago also. But if you're interested in hearing about some of the paints, I'll be able to provide you that too. I'll add in the link in the description for the paints. But if you want a little more details, instructions for it, shout me out on social media or email. I'll be happy to respond to you. But the game's awesome. I highly recommend it. Even if you get the reprint when it comes out, while it won't look as violent, it's still a whole lot of fun, and the game mechanisms are just superb, and it has the right amount of luck to get me excited and the right amount of strategic and intensity and just straight up disappointment that I would expect in a game about bidding and fighting and war, and I love it. But that's honestly all I have for you guys today. If you're interested in notifications, there is a bell up there somewhere. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I do appreciate any feedback. I'm trying to make these videos more and more outrageous, and with your guys' help, I have been doing so. Monday, regular board game reviews. Wednesday, weekly update / talks, and on Fridays, my vintage board game reviews. That is all I have for you guys today. I'll see you guys next time.